So, I mean, for introductions, I'm Casey Hollabaugh, Hollabaugh Brothers, Portland, Oregon, located off of 17th and Powell over here. Today we're going to do just kind of an owner's training, walk around the equipment that's here. We've got basically 2 hot water circulating boilers from A.O. Smith. Those are the XW1300s. We've got an HD, I do believe it's either a 42 or 48 500-gallon storage tank that they're routed through, and then we've got a TechBar 263 2-stage boiler control that actually does the control operation of these boilers. I'm the representative for A.O. Smith. I've had some interactions with the TechBar. I'll go through it as much as I can off of there, but I am not the rep for that, just to clarify that. But I'll showcase what these typically do for the system on here. So first things first, kind of looking at what we have 2 XW1300s. What that means is each one of these boilers is 1.3 million BTUs on there. They're set to a lead lag, which means that one's going to heat, then the other's going to heat, and they're going to do that 1 stage, 2 stage, 1 stage, 2 stage, and then they'll reverse so that we're going to be able to give equal run time to both these boilers. If needed, they both can kick on if there's a very large demand, but the goal is to have a lead lag so that we're not just firing all at one boiler, firing all at the other boiler. We do want to have rotation going on. A couple things when we look at these boilers. These screens here are all touchpad screens. When you look at it, you'll see an enable, disable button here. Enable, disable does not kill the power to these boilers. What enable, disable does is basically disables the function of the boiler, so it's not going to kick on, but you still have full power onto the boilers to actually look at the screens and kind of make diagnostics. It's utilized, if we click this on disable, I can then go in, hook up my multimeter, see points of voltage coming in, amperage coming in, and I can still do a lot of testing if I needed to. But if you want to kill the entire power to each of these boilers, it's actually in the back. So the full cutoff is in the back. It's a little dial switch you can see over here that shows, I'm sorry, I'll route this thing. You can do it on this one, it's easier. It's right in the back of the heater. So right now it's on. If we wanted to turn it off, we turn this dial off, and now we've killed power to the boiler. So each one of those has got a disconnect right there that we would be able to utilize. A couple other things to note. You might want to just keep it just so I can show. Each one of these units is set up with its own pump. So that pumps what's generating flow through the actual boiler, which is going to determine, what our temperature is on the inlet side. It's going to tell what GPM we've got flowing through the units. We also have condensate neutralizers on here. These boilers are ultra high efficient units. They're over 95% efficient. They get up to 98% efficient depending on what stage firing we're at. So they will condensate. This venting is all stainless steel venting, so it's not going to corrode due to the condensation, but the condensation is going to flow back through. You can see the tubing down here with the neutralization. Check with your manufacturer. I know with ours, those aren't going to be ours, but typically your neutralization should be looked at 1 to 2 years on the replacement side of it, so that we can make sure we're taking that and basically nullifying the condensation going through your drain line on here. Walk through back here.
Is that the neutralizer that gets replaced?
Yeah, neutralization, you look at it, most manufacturers have between a 1 to 2 year. Typically what that is kind of a limestone in there. That's going to take that neutralization and basically make it more inert.
Are you able to lock out, tag out on that shutoff, the disconnect?
What now? Sorry?
Are you able to lock out, tag out off this disconnect for the boiler power? Should be.
Yeah, yes you are. Yep.
You are listed as a
Yes, yes. Let's go over to the tank real quick. We'll take a quick peek. This is a cement lined storage tank, meaning that you've got a manhole basically here for access. It's cement lined. It can handle a whole lot of temperature and a whole lot of durability. It's extremely heavy, I can tell you that, but we do cement lined to make sure we've got the best protection on hot water off of there. That's why this is a cement lined tank. On the very top of that, you've got your boiler relief valve. That boiler relief valve is a safety valve that if God forbid, if these boilers run wild, we've got a pressure relief valve there that if this thing's building too hot a temperature than it's what it's meant to do, we're going to start dumping out of there. So if that starts dumping, and I mean full dump scalding water, we know we've got a temperature problem we've got to correct. It's a big time safety issue. If we have a little bit of spurting a little bit like that, but the water's not scalding hot, more than likely that's a pressure issue that we've got to figure out what's going on there. But typically with those relief valves, you know, you'll never see them operate, which is a good thing on there. That's a safety. Right back here.
Do they need to be tested or used periodically?
You know, I get that question. You can exercise them if you want. The problem is a lot of times when you exercise, sometimes you can't get them back to seat properly. So if you see them relieve, traditionally if they relieve, we do say to replace them so that the seating can come back to normal. But if they will fail and relieve if we've got a weak spring or weak this, so you don't really have to exercise it to actually get there. It's not like they're going to stick closed. They will fail open off of there. That's our expansion tank right here on the system. That expansion tank is covering the load on thermal expansion off the tank and off the line on here. Again, that tank is pressurized to a point that's a balance so that when thermal expansion is happening on the storage tank, it's going to route back, go into that tank. There's a bladder in that tank that's going to take that impact, so we're not taking it on our storage tank off of there. Yes, sir.
What's the pressurization on that bladder?
It depends on what they set it for. I mean, your system pressure traditionally is, 70 psi in the system. Lots of your tanks are coming shipped at 40 psi off of there. Some are even lower, and you pressurize them up. We suggest that a lot of times you pressurize it to around 5 psi, what the system pressure is, to make sure. I don't know off the top what that one is without going back to our service agent on there. Okay, that's kind of just a real generic overview. You've got shutoff valves. Yes, sir.
Is that your only electrical installed, that temperature probe?
Yeah, that's going to be your probe that's going to be routing all the way over to the Techmark controller. Okay, and that's going to be measuring our supply temperature off of the system. All right, let's look at basic operation here real quick. I'm not sure how much people are going to get into it, but I do want to kind of give you, we'll just do it on this one. These are the exact same controllers, exact same boilers. So, okay, so we've got kind of a boiler operation here. We've got a master burner, 2-burner. When we open this up, there's a 2-burner setup into this unit. If there was 4 burners, you'd see 4 controllers on here. But first things first, if we wanted to see what this boiler was set to, we're going to hit lead lag master on there. And then we're going to see the set point here. We're going to hit that little set point controller. We're going to hit OK, and then we can adjust this thing what we want to do on there. I'm going to leave it at 150, but that's all you do to set it like that, and then you're set on the actual boiler itself for the temperature of the heater. If you want to go back to the original menu, we'll hit this little house. So as we hit that house, it takes us all the way back to the controller on there, and that's really how you set this. Now, the temperature on this unit is 150 and this one's 150. That's going to be relayed over to the Techmark controller. So the Techmark controller is not relaying so much this temperature, it's relaying the tank temperature. But the tank temperature is impacted by this temperature. Makes sense somewhat? That's kind of a roundabout way of showing the control. Okay, other things you can do on here is in a differential setting, meaning when do we want this thing to come on. Let's say that's set at 145. Our boiler's set at 150. This thing's going to be set at 145 because it's relaying that temperature of that tank. The differential of the units is going to be, okay, when do we want that heater to kick on? We're not going to want it to kick on instantly when this thing drops underneath 145, or else we're going to have short cycling occurring within the boilers. So we set what's called a set point differential on there. And the set point differential is actually controlled by this guy, but I'll also show you how you can do it on this as well. So if we go to our lead lag master on here, we go to configure, we go over to advanced settings, you'll see it says hysteresis on it. It's got a 5-degree on here on off and on. Hysteresis is another, it's Honeywell's way of saying temperature differential. So we could click on that guy and we could up that or down that to actually create whatever delta T we wanted through these boilers on there. So if I were to put this to 10 to 15 degrees, these aren't going to operate until that thing actually drops down below a 15 degree off that set. Then we hit home. Come on. And then we're back. A couple other things to look at here. We can actually check if there's been fault histories on these guys, as well as the run cycles of each individual unit. In order to do that, we click on one of the burners on there. And when we click on one of the burners, we can hit on the configure. If we hit the configure button, then we've got some statistics we can look at. So we can look at pump configurations. We can look at, let me go back here. Go back. Hold on here. We can look at statistics configurations. So the statistics configuration is actually going to give you the run cycle. So you can see this guy's ran 726 cycles. It's done a boiler run time of 153 hours. The pump cycle 623 cycles, and then auxiliary pump cycles 814 cycles on here. This is good for, you know, periodic maintenance on there. If we're going to flush that heat exchanger out, make sure we've got stainless steel heat exchangers in here. They've got a 5-year warranty to them. We've got a 1-year part, 1-year labor associated to each one of these, and that's based on when these actually go into full operation. These have received a factory startup already, so they are approved by the manufacturer. That came when you purchased these boilers. That came with an authorized factory startup. We have all of those documentations registered, by the way, back at A.O. Smith. So if anybody needs to see the run history of when they did the startup, that is all logged back there on there. And what they'll end up doing is they come in, they check flue temperatures, they check gas pressures, they check boiler configurations, write it up, get it all approved, and we're basically up and operational.
Is that when the warranty started? Was when it started up?
You know, the warranty actually starts when the occupation occurs. So when this school goes back into occupation, it's called basically a certificate of occupancy. So what I would recommend is that when this goes into actual full operation, we have ourselves a copy of that certificate on there, and that's what we use for basis of warranty on it. If you do not, then
5 years.
5 year on the heat exchanger, yeah. And then 1 year on the parts, so boards, independent parts, and we can look inside here. Basically.
You guys have literature?
Hmm?
You guys have literature?
Yeah, I've got a little spec book I printed out that I'll leave here.
All this stuff hooked up online so they can read it on their computers downtown or not?
No,
Nothing.
no, not that I'm aware of on my end.
That temperature will be on your Niagara base system. And the circulation pump.
When you look at this, a couple things as we open this up to take a peek at, the number one thing to start with is this item ID tag. This item ID tag is going to have what the heater is, so it's going to say an XWH 1300 Series 100. That 100 is the series number, so we'll need to know that information if we call in. It's going to have the serial number, 18251108, yada yada yada. That's going to tell technical service exactly what the build was on this unit. And then it's also going to have just the basic electrical statistics on there, the voltage on it, the hertz, the amps, the item ID number. And then it's also going to have the actual technical support number. So when you call in, that technical support number, the first thing they're going to ask you is, do you have a serial number of the water heater? And that triggers the actual incident registration of the unit itself. So if there's anything that goes on there, service agent, let's say it's within the first year, we'll have our service agent come out. They're going to be utilizing that serial number. They will call into A.O. Smith Technical. They will go through the diagnostics of the unit, and each time that gets registered within their log. Now, outside the warranty, similar thing would be that the maintenance groups would call in. We could either send somebody out. It would be outside the warranty, so it would be charged, or you guys can kind of walk through the steps with tech service as well on there. A couple things to look at. I won't go too deep into this because it can be, fairly technical on here, but you've got dual burner trains on here. So what that means is we've got our blowers down here, we've got our burners basically behind there. These are all operated independently and controlled. So if there is work that needs to be done on one of the burners, we can shut just that burner down and the other one's still operational. So even though we only have 2 burners on here, we got 2 burners on here, technically we have a 4-to-1 operation of this equipment on there. Okay. The other thing to note on this equipment is it does have a 5-to-1 load rate on there, meaning that even though we're at 1.3 million BTUs, this thing's going to escalate in fifths to load. So it's going to start slow on that load, next level, next level, next level until full fire on there. So it's not all firing 1.3 million at once. It's going to have a stage start on there. Okay. With 2 units, that's actually a 10-to-1 then, because that's going to stage, stage, stage. That one's going to stage, stage, stage. So you actually have a 10-to-1 total fire ratio on these units. A couple other things. I mean, safety precautions down here, fairly standard. It looks like we've got electrical wiring on here as well in the packet. We've got the check sheet that they filled out, good to go when they tested on here. I don't see, let me see. We've got the startup form information, we got the wiring, we've got the actual boiler registration on there. I'm going to leave the specification packet with it as well, so you have that, as well as a parts breakdown listing. That can be sometimes a pain to kind of locate, so I'll leave that packet. I only have one packet, but I'll leave it here so you guys have that to make sure if any of these parts you'll be able to have numbers to work with. So we're going to shut this bad boy.
They're separate independent controllers, separate independent burners, and both talk to the interface, which talks with the control back and forth.
Correct. So if you look at these, and these will show you, I mean, each one of these is its own independent control into the burner on there. So if we click on this guy, we could set this, I mean, I wouldn't recommend, it's already been touched with, so I wouldn't recommend screwing around with it, but just to kind of show you for an owner's training, each one of those burners has its own control built into this that we can play with if need be on it. So if you were to service it, we could shut down per this controller that burner, keep the other ones in operation to work with.
What am I going to be looking for if something goes wrong with one of these? Because the other one's going to catch up and control it if one's down.
You'll see an error. It'll actually go yellow in an error code on the unit.
On the unit. So
Yep.
I'm looking at the unit screen then.
Yep. It'll show you saying, uh-oh, we've got that burner's not it's supposed to be in sequence. It didn't kick on. We've got an error flashing
So I'll
on
be
there.
seeing flashing on those ones.
Correct.
Is there a
And actually, let me see.
for service personnel only?
Is there a passcode for, or to lock these things out? Yeah, we can actually lock, if we wanted to create our own login on here and just make it so that nobody could get into it, we can
But
on there.
it's open to anybody.
As it sits right now, somebody could come in and just start pressing buttons, yeah, on there. Let's do this. We're going to go back. We're going to go boom, boom.
Are these going to get a phenolic label that say what they are? We want to know what unit it is back here.
Yeah, so let me show you one other quick thing here too. So if we want to see what the air history is on these units, so let's say that, you know, these have been in operation for 5 years and we need to get a history rundown of what the airs are. We're going to hit the burner button. We're going to go over to configure, I'm sorry, we'll go back here, I did that wrong. We're going to go over, we're going to hit the burner button. We're going to go over to, details, so details on the right, and then we can hit this history button. As we hit this history button, it's going to show what the actual issues are. Now, a lot of it using backup lead lag header sensor, lead boiler was rotated based on a measured run, lead lag operation switch was turned on. So what this is saying is that the boiler itself's not controlling the actual rotation of the boiler operation. It's being controlled by that external controller. But outside of that, we can hit lockouts. If we hit lockouts, it's going to show what the lockouts were. And a lot of these are low gas because, well, all of them basically, which basically meant that when these were getting put in, there was no gas to it. So you typically see that during startup, that you got to add gas to it. So that's really what those showcased. So again, I was kind of a little choppy showing it. You hit the burner. We're going to hit details. We're going to hit history. And then that's going to give us our standard history right now. And if we want to see what the lockouts are, we're going to hit lockouts. And that'll show you your lockouts on there. So that'll give you a full rundown on that. That's the basics of these boilers to kind of go through. I'll show you a little bit about what I know on this Tecmar controller. Again, I'm not the Tecmar guy, but I'll show you what this is really saying on here. So there's two ways on this controller that are operational. There is the menu button that's going to make it toggle between a view screen and an adjustment screen. So when you look at this, right now we're on the view screen. So if I hit item, it's going to move in a little icon that says view. And now we can see what we're viewing this controller at. So I'm going to go through what I know on this. So this is saying an output. So you've got a couple things on this controller that it can do. The one that we're using this for is to be able to modulate these boilers. That's what we're doing. So we're rotating the boilers based on run cycle on there. But this can do a lot more than that. So sometimes you're going to see some codes on here. You're going to be like, why does it say air on here? And I'll try to explain the best of my ability. So like on this, it says outdoor air. That outdoor is an outdoor reset, and it's a sensor that's not plugged in here because we're not using the outdoor reset feature of this unit. So it's going to show an error basically saying, hey, you don't have it active, which we wouldn't have active on here. There's no need. As we toggle through, we're going to see boiler supply temperature. So this is reading the inlet supply to the boilers, and it's showing at 126 degrees right now coming through. We hit item again, it's going to show the demand. We've got that set to 145 degrees, so domestic hot water demand is at 145. And that's basically what we showcase on the view screen. So we show the inlet coming into the boiler, and we show the tank demand temperature set on here. Now if we want to adjust, we hit menu. And that menu button, so we've got so if we just left it alone again, all we can see without hitting menu is basically the view portion of what this is set at. If we want to adjust, we hit menu, and that puts the adjust icon up here and showcases a couple features we can adjust. One says room. So this actually has a control to measure the room temperature. Again, we don't really care about that. So it shows 71, but you're not going to mess with that. This doesn't really have any sort of control over our boilers. We'll hit item. Now this is where we're showing again an outdoor reset, and it shows 10 degrees. That's an outdoor reset controller that we don't have the outdoor reset control set up on here. That doesn't matter on here. We can show terminal. This shows what terminal actually the sensors are into. So number 4 is a terminal actually into the controller on here. Mass, that's the mass of the boiler. So we've got a low mass, a high mass, and a middle mass. This is set up as middle mass on the unit. We've got an auxiliary. So 1 shows an auxiliary probe that we've got plugged in here. We can toggle that and change that if we want, but that's set to the auxiliary probe reading coming out of the unit. Same with number 2. So we've got 2 auxiliary ports coming out that are wired in here. And then we can change the temperature of what we want on that unit. So if we wanted a higher temperature on the tank, we can adjust that up to, and that's going to control when these boilers kick on. It's going to read that sensor off of there and then turn on these boilers to actually achieve that. And then we've got warm weather shutdown. Again, that's more of on a hydronic side, and it's set to off. So those are all really the basics of what you can adjust on here. There's other things you can do as well in order to access. You just pop this cover off, and you've got your little dip switches here that basically have been programmed for these boilers. So If you wanted to go to the installer mode, that gets you deeper into the controls, that's where you'd flip that onto installer mode. We turn that on so we could get even deeper into the controls. But for what we're looking at here, it's basically the stuff I went through on there. And that's really what this control is. It's already been set, like I said. The only thing you'd really set here is if we wanted hotter temp on that tank, we'd set that tank higher on the DHW that I showed on here. We could press, again, we'd go menu to adjust, we toggle over to the actual point on there, and then we could go up and down. We could screw around with that and set it. So I'm going to leave it as it was. I've not moved any of these. They've just set with what they were set with. And there you go. Now, Tekmar, I will tell you this, just for an owner's training, Tekmar is owned by Watts Regulator, but it is handled by a company called Proctor Sales out of Wilsonville on there. So if you need anything on this controller, I mean, you can contact me. I'm not the guy, but Proctor Sales would be the actual rep that's got service group that would come down and be able to check this out. And they're right over in Wilsonville. Pretty easy to get a hold of on there. So that's what I got right now. Anything else you guys can think of? I mean, that's...
Somebody, I think it was the general talking about gas control on these. We're going to get a confirmation on how gas is corrupted during a fire alarm.
Yeah, and I'll be working with, that's not through him, but yeah, we'll get you that answer later on today.
Okay. Are these on EMS to turn on in the morning, turn off at night?
Don't think they
I
are.
think they are.
Why aren't they connected to the EMS panel? There's piping going to the EMS panel.
On the sensors?
Yeah.
I don't know how, where's Rich? I don't know how he had...
He said something about pumps being controlled by the EMS.
Again, huh? Where's the wiring coming in from the...
From over there. I think it's shot over this way.
So it's dropped into the EMS?
Drop in here and then shoot them.
Okay. So yeah, I guess they are. I apologize. It's not something I knew right off the top.
So do we know how, if that's going to turn off nightly?
I
Or what the...
do not know on the sequence of how they've set these on
Is
here.
hydraulic heating?
No, these are domestic hot water. Yep, that's it. These are all domestic. AO actually doesn't do any sort of true boilers anymore. It's just domestic hot water. So let me give you...
maintenance schedule on this besides the corrosion or the exhaust neutralizers for the pumps?
The heat exchangers you can flush. I would recommend once every couple years on there. I mean, we don't have, our water is pretty darn good, and this is a stainless burner train, stainless exchanger in here, so it's not going to get too bad, but flushing every couple years helps preserve that going through on it. So just flushing out the heat exchangers to work with.
Just like the water, or what would you flush it with?
You can flush it with a descaling solution that companies like there's multiple companies out there that make a descaling solution through there to prevent any sort of buildup on it. Here is the actual spec book that's going to showcase what's here on it, so you can see 5-year heat exchanger warranty, bronze mounted pumps, basically everything you see here. It's also going to give you we go through, I've highlighted out what these are, the recovery rise on the units on it. I've also put, like I said, the parts breakdowns on here, which is handy, so this has got a full part sheet to work with on there.
Is this hot surface ignition or is it electronic ignition?
Electronic. Yeah.
Do they have a photo eye to confirm that it's lit, or does it just go on just a thermal sensor that the pilot was established for?
It's going to show over here, there's a little icon when this thing's engaged, so it's a little burner icon that turns on there, so it'll show on 1, on 2 on the icon on that guy.
And that's just so we know for troubleshooting if you can't get the straight night, whether, have it tested or hot.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be an error. If this thing is told to turn on with an enable, so that basically is creating an enable to this saying, come on. And if for whatever reason, when that hits an enable and there's something up with the burner train on this guy, and it's going to show on here, wait, I can't come on. It's no different. What we've just done is routing that thermistor instead of directly in here, it goes over to here to relay here on it. So the same type of concept. If it was wired directly into here, that would be our enable disable to the boiler to turn on based on the temperature of the water coming through, and then it would go through its burner train 1, burner train 2. If there's an issue with it, then you're going to get an error code off of there saying, hey, I can't kick burner 1 on, and it'll showcase right away on here. We reroute over here, so that's now going to show when that burner is on, off on the controller. So you'll see a little power burner flame on there, and it'll have a number 1 for the number 1, number 2 for the number 2, and then both of them when they're both operating on there.
It's more in your igniter though. On your igniter, how does it know if it has a flame before it goes to high flow?
There's flame sensor in there. Yeah, there's a flame sensor. So it's going to be able to showcase as that burner kicks on, that flame sensor is going to kick and relay back and say, hey, we've got ignition off there. Yeah.
So is this a closed system? It's domestic hot water. I mean, can you go to a restroom and get hot water out of the sink?
Yeah, this is all part of your domestic hot water
The
system.
kitchen?
Yeah, this is pulling everything. This is all pulling off that tank. Yep. Yep. Yeah, none of this is hydronic water that I'm aware of. You got that big animal. I'm not sure if that one's doing.
Yeah,
That's your hydronic boiler to work with then, on there. That's got a big old beast of a tank there too.
Any other questions?
Gas line, all that fun stuff. Yeah, I can. Of course, I'll leave my card. I'll put my card in here as well, so that again, if somebody needs me, by all means, we're over here off Division.
Troubleshooting table.
What now?
Troubleshooting table.
Can you get lock box on that controller so that it's
Sometimes,
Hey, do you have extra copies of that?
This? Yeah, I can run whatever you need. Oh, okay.
You know they have one here? I'm keeping everything in my office.
Yeah, I'll print out. Do you have a card on you? I'll just email. Okay. Okay, I'll send it to Richard. Get him to dial it in. I'm gonna grab. Excuse me. There, that's in there. I don't know where you guys want. I'll just leave that.